Again, as an educated middle-class woman, I know that when I walk into spaces, I carry a certain currency that is not carried by my brother who can't pee in a toilet that I peed in when I went to Wits.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But at the same time, I also acknowledge that when I do walk into spaces, for example, going into very poor, disenfranchised communities, I also have to acknowledge that the dysfunction that I see that exists in those communities is part of my historical baggage. I carry it within me. It's in my family, it's in my heart, it's in my choices. And what is worrisome is seeing people who own so much power in terms of land, in terms of resources, in terms of people you employ, in terms of the language that you've taken from these people and used to create a nation. You own so much power, but do you concede that? Do you acknowledge that? Do you own that? If you owned a little bit of that, it would be easy to come to the table with you. It would be easy to acknowledge death is death, pain is pain. I mean, there were 350 years of conscription in this country. It's only one generation of white men who didn't go into the military. How much pain exists in white families? I'd be willing to hear that more than I'm willing to hear that your pain is your pain only, because everybody in this room is carrying pain.
But I don't believe the debate from our side. 20 years into this democracy, the debate from our side has never been to negate your pain, nor has it ever been about saying that we want back to where we came from. White people voted for this democracy.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't, Sissy. No, they didn't.
Yes.
A handful. Did you vote ANC in 1994?
I'm not talking about the ANC. Please listen. In 1992, white people had a referendum to decide whether they're going to allow the vote. And we gave the vote because we thought that what was happening was wrong.
It wasn't yours to give. Do you acknowledge that? It was not your country to take in the first place, but we acknowledge the fact that you are here. We acknowledge that you are
here. I chose Australia's best student city. Make Melbourne your choice for study.
It wasn't your country to take.
Is it your country?
It's all of our countries, but acknowledge it's all of ours. It's all of ours. It's all of ours.
It's not yours. It's not yours.
This is not the place. This is not the place. Sir?
It's my country.
Yes, sir, this is not the place.
It's everyone's country.
People wearing this beret are saying we don't belong here.
Okay, no one can hear you at this point, so I'd like to actually have a conversation, and I'll ask for tolerance in this room, please. Tolerance. All right, Sinet?
What I'm saying is that I don't think the problem is with people on the ground, even the people sitting here. People who govern and politicians are determining the success of what is happening on the ground. We have rhetoric where people go on stages and say the colonists must go and we stole the land and we stole the mines. The Brits took the mines. Buddha never had mines. And we can't keep on having that rhetoric and move forward. Every time I switch on a television or I put on a radio and Julius Malema says that we don't belong here, and what is happening? It's a problem. You cannot preach reconciliation to one segment of the country and preach empowerment to the other segment.
All right.
There's a vast difference between, and I agree with you, there's a vast difference between rhetoric that's used to manipulate the population and sway people and the truth. Ne? And I would be interested in hearing how white people process the emotional baggage of what their ancestors did. I would be interested in trying to understand what it did to white families. How much silence did white people have to cope with? How did white people build a shield around themselves to be able to deal with the system in which whiteness operated all these years? That's an emotional conversation. That's a delicate conversation. I'd be willing to do the work of trying to unravel that, because right now as a black person, I'm trying to do the work of unraveling my own baggage, my own historical baggage. I think when white people start to do that work, then we'll start to begin the project of trying to understand how all of us belong to this place. But you can't erase history. We can't pretend the violence didn't happen. We can't pretend colonialism didn't happen. We can't pretend people weren't slaves. We can't pretend our people are not poor.
Admitted. The Rainbow Nation has failed the whole idea of non-racialism 20 years on, a pipe dream. In fact, we should blame you marketing guys, because you came up with it and then you exploited it for your own commercial gain.
No, I don't think that marketing, came up with it. In fact, it was Archbishop Tutu came up with it.
And you exploited it.
And he was like, the Rainbow Nation of,
Yes.
that's,
Yeah.
he called
And then
the
you
phrase.
exploited it.
I'm not even going to talk about marketing. I can understand what Mandela was trying to do, what, Archbishop Tutu and them were trying to do, but you are not going to get that done in like 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. Because when you used to sing a black person as a garden boy your whole life, and you are not used to seeing a black person as an intelligent person who can think for themselves, who can produce and do things, then you are not likely to accept them as someone who's equal to you.
So Sangam Samang, it's a long-term project, right? So we must just be patient.
No. I think that the concept of being patient assumes that there isn't an urgency to it. So while at the same time, I think we all recognize that non-racialism is a work in progress, we need measures now that address the very real situations in which people are living. We cannot accept, as Archbishop Tutu says, that because of the color of your skin, you will be born, you will live a certain kind of life, and you will die in that same station. My children go to a nursery school, and in that nursery school, there's not a single one of the preschool teachers who is not white. And there's not a single one of the teaching assistants who is white. So the message every single day for those women, there is a ceiling, and until this changes, you will never get this job.
Sinette Bridges, why do we need a Red October movement? I mean, we have 30 million black people in this country who don't have a plate of food. Wouldn't it be better for you to fight that? Would that not make you a little bit more secure, as you heard from Desmond Tutu, that white people in this country are lucky?
I don't agree with what Desmond Tutu said, firstly, at all. And I don't think we can prescribe to tell people what they can and cannot march for. People become involved in projects and march for things that are important to them. There are people marching 6 marches per day in this country, violent ones. And then it is very easy to make an insert, like the one that was played before the show, where the fact that there is white poverty is completely denied, ignored. I, in fact, don't think that most of the people here know that there are white squatter camps.
So why not partner then with the other people who are in squatter camps who are fighting for similar things to those white South Africans who live in squatter camps?
Well,
why segregate yourselves?
No, part of the Red October was had to do with affirmative action, broad-based black economic empowerment. These are discriminatory laws. There are 1 million people, white people, left in the job market in South Africa. So even if you took every single one of their jobs, if you took every single white job away from them and gave all of those 1 million jobs to a black person, then you will just have 1 million more white people that are poor.
But no one's asking for 1 million jobs to be taken away from white
It is
people.
happening. It is, in fact, happening.
But no one's asking for it.
It seems to me the height of self-indulgence for white people to go on and on about affirmative action in the face of so many very real and pressing national problems. And I think part of what's going on with the affirmative action kind of hang-up that white people have is it's the one area since, democracy came where white people were forced to not be allowed to state their case and to win that particular fight. And so part of how racism works is that we view white people's pain as more important than black people's pain, right?
Sinette?
No, that's not true at all. You view us as thinking that our problems are more important, and then we think that you think that your problems are more important. And that's the problem that we have. And can I finish, please? Because you and I should have coffee, and then you can sort out your personal issues with me. I'm not denying that there are hectic problems in this country that need to be addressed. But we can also not deny the fact that very many of these problems are service delivery, maintenance problems due to cadre deployment, affirmative action. Because people have been put into positions that they are not qualified to do, and the country is falling apart.
When we talk about these things, it always seems to me that the reality of living in South Africa passes some people by, like Sonette. And you can throw out certain statistics, like 18% of white people live in so-called squatter camp.
Have you ever been to a white squatter camp? Yeah.
If you actually follow statistics that are scientifically taken, then you see, for example, that after 1 year of graduation, a white graduate is about 10 times as likely to have gotten a job than a black graduate. Why is that?
Absolutely. But there is the reality of hundreds, if not thousands, of white farmers being killed on their farms. We can't ignore it.
If you're a black person living in Khayelitsha, your life is far more at risk than any white person living anywhere. Exactly. Me as a middle-class white person driving in a car, the threat to my existence for crime is far, far less than if you are a poor and black person, because of the way in which apartheid structured our society.
In terms of the insight that you've given and so on, you talk about racism against black people. You also talk about white farmers being killed. Whilst there's no mention that the second largest population group in this country, not being white, them being colored, is so neglected. We've got the highest incarceration rate. So we are so caught up between a white-black debate and so on. And this ideal, the zebra debate, this ideal where we want to grow to in terms of a rainbow nation is, so to say, denied because we are leaving behind the people who are originally in this country.
Let me ask you this. When the racial categorizations are made in this country under, for example, black economic empowerment, employment equity, colored people fall under black people. Why do you feel the need? No. Yes, let me finish my point and then you can respond. Why you feel you must hold on to that identity and why it then leads to the exclusion that you're talking about?
There can be many reasons, but the sole reason is we are a social construct in this country. Secondly, constitutionally, we have the right to associate us with whomever we want to. Yes. We are coloreds. There's nobody representing us here. I'm just asking for fairness. I'm saying if we are really serious about speaking about racism, let us give each other a fair chance. Let us say there must be a black person, there must be a colored person, a white person, an Indian person. But you can't say let's talk seriously about racism, but you exclude us.
All right. Dr. Mulder, if you could stand up for me.
The Rainbow Nation is in trouble, in serious trouble. When we started the constitutional writing process in '95, I was present as a member of parliament. An ad was put out to the public to say, what is South Africa about? It said, at that time, 20 million women, 18 million men, 8 religions, 25 church denominations, 31 cultural groups, 14 languages, 9 race groups, 1 country. And if you look at the audience today, that is the reality of South Africa. The question is, how do we deal with that reality? How do we take South Africa forward and create a society where we can live in peace and harmony and take our country forward? Now, my fight is not so much with our friend from Coca-Cola. My fight is with a friend from South African breweries. The impression is created of this wonderful rainbow nation. We see that every Saturday in sporting advertisements. The true problem is that the recipe for nation building in South Africa is wrong. We cannot stumble from one sporting event to the next and think we're going to build a nation in terms of people feeling that they belong, that they are accommodated. That's why the Minister of Sport reacted so terribly about Bafana, calling them useless idiots. Yeah. Why? He hoped that they would win the cup and the ruling party can ride on that sentiment until the election. That's what he hoped.
Do Indian people feel the same way as colored people, that they are excluded, that they are a separate group and should be dealt with separately?
Well, I don't know. I'm not here as an Indian person. I'm here as a black South African woman. The problem, I think, is that in the first few years of our democracy, the ANC had a discussion which they called the national question about how it deals with the question of race. But as time went by, after the Mandela presidency, the ANC abandoned that because there were other priorities in the country, and rightly so. And what you then had is people retreating into their lagers. So what you have is people like Sunette and my black brother across there who believe that they are different. And there is no intelligent debate in this country other than what we're doing now on how to deal with these issues and how to help people like this to see that their problems are no different from everybody else's problems. And that when you talk about squatter camps in this country, it's more to do with class rather than a few people, that feel that they need to be treated differently and that their problems need to be treated differently.
All right. I don't know. It's a huge project, this. Building this country, not fighting with each other and not pointing fingers. Why are we not in this together?
I think the defining chord that runs through South African identity is the sense of exclusion. If you're poor and black, you feel excluded. If you're white and your ancestors were colonialists, you feel excluded. If you're multiracial, if you're colored, and your ancestors were slaves and colonialists, you feel excluded. Everybody in this country feels like they're being pushed out of the box of South Africanness. Our country was built on 350 years of systemic violence. Systemic violence, misogyny, and the exclusion of people. When we start to deal with the emotional, psychological, and spiritual baggage of that, then we'll start to form a country, we'll start to form a nation. But that is real, deep, inner, emotional, loving work. We need to start speaking from a place of love for self, from a place of love for our children, from a place of wanting this society to be what we imagine it to be in our minds, in our dreams. We've got to want something better than what we have now, and want it more than we want to be right.
And when we return, we hear from gardeners who have been victims of racism here in Johannesburg. This is The Big Debate. And welcome back to The Big Debate on Racism. A black South African can expect to receive approximately 13 cents for every rand received by a white South African. That's up 1 cent since 1994. Some of those workers paid the least are domestic workers, cleaners and gardeners. Wits University has outsourced some of these workers to save money. Let's speak to one of them.
Yeah, ke berekela university as outsource, so I gone treatment je di swanetseng je di bontshang gore re batho je re tšeo ka batho. I mean, if you bola ka racism la motho motlamile re bola ka inequality e leng gona go university. I mean, if o sana le batho ba sa sabeletsang ba golang 1,200 rand or 2,000 rand ka kgwedi, which means a gona re ka gore yang as batho ba ntsho. University even ka bo yona I engage or I netaba le batho ba bantsho in order go teach civilization if you nka bola ka mogona o.
Okay, so nibhatala kancinci futhi anikwazi ungena kwi toilet zonke eze university, anikwazi ungena nase library.
No, library abadumele batho ba tsana ka library, especially as ba sebetsa or as outsource. But previously ga ba sa dumele even ba ya go toilet ba batla batho ba sebetsa toilet e1. Racism is a inequality.
I'm listening to everything that's been going on, and everyone is talking like us, the coloreds. No one is talking about us. We, the black people, were being oppressed. Oh, there's white poverty. No one is talking about the white poverty. And I think the issue is resourcism over racism. Everyone thinks that there aren't enough resources for me. And what happens, even if you look at other countries, you look at Greece, for example, look at Russia, the moment they experience a recession, what happens is that they start attacking foreigners.
Of course, there's a resource problem. But in essence, the whole question, why can't we just get along, sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya? It is all about power. Who has the power? And power is not only whether you have political power. It's whether you have economic power, yes. Whether you have social power. If you have a white skin in a racist society, you have more social power. And it's a nasty concoction of things that makes it very difficult for people to come together as equals.
Now, so are you admitting then that by virtue of having a white skin, that you have a level of power that I, with my black skin, wouldn't?
I do, socially. For example, if I go into a shop, I know that no matter if I come from the gym if I go to the gym and I'm dressed scruffily, nobody's going to assume that I am somehow up to mischief. If I'm a black person and I go to the same thing, people are going to assume it.
Hello guys, this is Golden Boy, and I believe that you have watched this debate amongst both the black and the white people. And guys, I've always known that South Africa is something that is very, very peaceful because it contains the white people and the black people. But the problem is that there is so much racism, the reverse racism and the racism amongst the South Africans. Now, it is very, very shameful that certain people in South Africa are still referring to color, especially those who refuse to accept Jesus as God, the word of God as declined in Revelation chapter 19. In the absence of theory on stupidity, they refuse to obey, honor, and respect God's commandments as written in Exodus chapter 20, repeated in Exodus chapter 34. His new commandment in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and his instruction in Matthew chapter 7. Furthermore, they use Desmond Tutu as their reference but never show his own words just before his defeat death about the NC apartheid movement. Typically, manipulation by force known as Satan as defined in Matthew chapter 16 and Revelation chapter 19 to control humans. You never argue with fools or idiots. They must rather find the purpose instead. Now, affirmative action ruined South Africa, and yes, just like black people are still going on about apartheid, which is already demolished but is still discussed and kept alive as an excuse for the black. Apartheid is no longer on the table, but the affirmative action is. Black people fail to benefit from the laws that was put in place to benefit them and still wants to blame the white people. Now, when we go to the so-called the Khoisan, who can't even accept and realize that one, this is Africa and not some island isolated, and Africa was divided amongst the Europeans as a country. Therefore, Africans are the native of this land. Two, Khoikhoi tribes still exist in the Northern Cape, Northern West, and Botswana and Namibia, and yet they can't even identify with those tribes. The South African's Khoikhoi narrative was constructed by white people, and it is said, when I see African, South Africa go along with this. Thabo Mbeki is to be blamed for giving this movement a boost. Khoikhoi tribe, just like the Sotho and Nguni tribe, has different subs within it. As a result, you find similarities between within the groups, languages like Setsuan, Sipendi, and many others. Now, there is so much result that you'll find that until they see themselves as African, they will always feel the way that they do. No one should feel sorry for those people who call themselves derogative names like colored. They are so caught up in the divide and rule that they cannot see the wood from the trees. There are only two races, black and white, and if these ignorant people really knew the power of the melanin in their skin, they will never call themselves as these colonizers named them colored. Come to the United States and tell black people that you are colored and see what will happen to you. Now, colored really means that you talk about pecking order designed to divide, rule, and distract while sustaining the inequalities. Some of those people calling themselves colored are darker skinned than myself, and in the United Kingdom, there is no such thing as colored. But until the emotion trauma has been addressed, not much will change, and whites need to suck it up. They have had a privilege, right, and complaint and inequality then. But it's always about them. Now they are the victims. Desmond Tutu is right. They should count themselves lucky after the outricides they committed against the indigenous people of. The only way for them is to share in the wealth that they earned of your servitude. They need to give you guys reparation so that you guys can start building and helping your economy. Also, you need is for them to give up Nigeria, some of them land, so that some of you guys can have land and places for you up on those borders, because the borders is what isolate you guys from people that look like you. You guys are being real, and to make as much as money amongst you. Now there's a lot of people who have said that these Europeans are really taking advantages of black people, right from the lands and even visas. You'll find that a lot of Africans usually apply for United States visas, but you'll find that 100% people are applying and 90% of people are getting rejected. Yet this money which they are using it for application is not refunded. So they have turned Africa as a business center, and it is high time that Africans realize that they are more stronger than these people. Now, white people own more than half Africa. And how is it that you come in and take over everything? Now you want to continue to kick out black people by having your own land. The entire globe is seen to be yours. Can any other group, not white, claim even their own land as theirs? And why is it that white deny racism, but racism is massive in spaces they are majority, and will only acknowledge for their benefits, bad or good? All of us will never come together as equal, not as long, but white privileges still exist. Look at what happens when we pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. What do the Europeans do? Tear it down or do something to take away from our progress. Then folks, a lot of them, and want nothing to do with us, but are constantly following us as this. What an educational statement. Like taking white people, 1 million jobs and giving it to poor people. She must have never traveled. In the Western, although not perfect, a black South African can come here and do very even in college education, and if they attended university, the sky is the limit. Let them have it. Wow, they have done us a real number on you guys in South Africa. Now there's a lot of things that happened, and people were saying that these white people are really taking advantage of Africa. And that was my major concern, that they have taken the majority of land in Africa, and which most of the Africans are now feeling uncomfortable. The bad thing is that they come up and say that Africans are racist, Africans are ignorant, Africans are not accepting them. Yet when you go to their country, these people will reject you in an instant where there's majority of white people. Thank you guys for watching this video. My name is Golden Boy. I hope you learned something in this interview, and I hope I'll see you in another episode.